Acceptance is not a mere mental acceptance, is not like a saying yes to what is here right now. It is not a mental approval. It is not like, oh, I must practice acceptance so that I can be at peace. Because that is on a sort of surface level. We can say at a deeper, subtler level, acceptance is to not be at any conflict with your experience right now, just right now, in this moment. In acceptance, there's not even a concept of before or after. There's not even a concept of next. It is simply the resolving of any conflict that may be, to not be at conflict. Any conflict that is there, any resistance that is there to this moment is also observed. By the mere observing of it, it is not something I am bound to. This is what we come to see in acceptance. Because right now, whatever arises, whether it be anger or frustration or resentment or resistance, it consumes us, it becomes us, it is experienced as what I am. You know, that's what we call a state of identification. The acceptance pointer invites us to observe the discomfort, the resistance, the fear, the anger, whatever it may be. And in that observation, in the observing without judgment, observing without story, observing without narrative, observing without description, we come to see that that which we observe, we need not suffer. We come to see that that which is observing the fear is not afraid. That which is observing the frustration is not frustrated. That which is observing the pain is not in pain. That which is aware is not at conflict with even the appearance of conflict. And this is very, very freeing. This is very, very opening. Otherwise, we remain very caught up in just the appearance of conflict, resistance. I am angry. I am fearful. I am sad. I am depressed. I am, we attach the beingness, the identity, me-ness to all of these changeful states. That is where we go wrong. And we suffer this changefulness. We suffer this contracted state of being. The only resolution is observing without judgment. So when I say acceptance is to not at all be at no conflict with experience. You may find, "Oh, this is not my experience." Like I do feel I'm in conflict with my experience. And this is where you're asked to pay attention to your direct experience. This is where you're asked to observe. Whatever may be the conflict, whether you call that pain or discomfort, fear, an uncomfortable sensation, emotion, feeling. You're asked to observe that and see that the observing of it is not running away from it. That the awareness of pain is not running away from pain. The moment you begin to observe the discomfort, some mental response may arise, some resistance arises, right? This is where the practice gets a little subtler. You're asked to observe even the resistance. The moment you become the observer of the resistance, knowingly, it can no longer control you either. And let's say you're trying to do your best at this, and then a great overwhelm arises. And when all of these things arise, they're only arising as thoughts and feelings, nothing else. No thought and feeling can harm you. Like it's harmless. So even when a great sense of overwhelm arises, you're asked to simply obey by that simple pointer, by learning to just observe even the sense of overwhelm. We don't have to be perfect at this, and matter of fact, we will not be, because in the beginning, especially when we're coming across this pointer, the momentum of mind, the momentum of being fixated in these things when they arise is very, very strong. So that's okay. There has to be a level of patience and uh, perseverance in a way. But we have to do our best to see this pointer through. We have to clearly see again and again, to the best of our capacity, that that which is observing is not it is not suffering. Any level of suffering that's even arising is observed by that which is not suffering, me. And so this pointer is direct and powerful because it puts you in the seat of that which is not suffering. It makes it clear to you that what I am not suffering, is not suffering. All suffering itself is something I am aware of. And there's no conflict in that. There's no resistance in observing. You know, we've discussed many times how the awareness of pain is this equal as the awareness of pleasure. At the level of awareness, there's no bias, there's no distinction, there's no separation, there's no division, there's no preference. There's not even a concept of good or bad. It is very factual, it is very actual, it is simply here, not running away from anything, not trying to avoid anything. Any mental avoidance is also being purely observed. And this is your direct experience. Take a look. So seeing this clearly puts you in the seat of that which is not suffering. It puts you in the seat of acceptance. It helps you recognize that my nature as that which is aware is acceptance. I am not a thing that does acceptance as a practice. That is how it may start off, right? Especially when you hear this teaching and you're excited to practice. But you start to uncover that my nature, what I am, is inseparable from acceptance, allowance, knowing, awareness. The hypnosis factor, though, is the story that arises with whatever discomfort or pain or frustration or anger. So that is where it becomes personal. And so this is where we have to keep it simple. The pointer asks us to, and this is of course where, if you haven't gone through the acceptance lectures yet, this is what we go through in detail. But you're being asked to take the attention away. You know, you can't fight your thoughts. You can't fight the story making, which is happening all, you know, like that's just the mind's activity. Story making, narrative, judgment, interpretation, description. So it will arise spontaneously, and especially due to the conditioning, it will perhaps, and the momentum, it will arise very often. It will become less and less through this practice, but The pointer is simply to bring your attention away from the story. You have to lose interest in all these constant interpretations of your current experience. So an uncomfortable sensation may be arising, and with it is arising this constant interpretation of it. How many times this has happened? When will this stop? Why is this happening to me? What is causing it? Is this important? And this keeps us really in that contracted viewpoint, being the discomfort and therefore suffering it. The key to this prison is simply taking the attention away from the dialogue. And just bringing it to the sensation of discomfort or whatever you're feeling. Seeing there's no harm in discomfort, that there's no conflict there. Observe freely. The problem is the mind constantly is describing what you're observing. But even that describing is observed. Just take your attention away from it. So just taking the attention away from the mind again and again in this way, bringing it to whatever you are currently experiencing, feeling whatever you're feeling fully, observing. It starts to unlock that prison door. It starts to dissolve that mental prison. It starts to dissolve the capacity of these thoughts overwhelming me, becoming me, keeping me contracted. There's nothing complicated about taking your attention away from thoughts. And if there is, I would love to hear it, and I'd like to help you through it. It's a very simple thing. It may not be easy, of course, because of the momentum of thoughts, but it's very simple. We have to lose interest in the descriptions that are arising, though. There's a great amount of interest and investment in the constant thinking process. So long as this interest is there, the immersion in it will be there as well. In the moment of its arising, and you actually have to notice how much your mind is just describing and judging, and it's useless. It's not adding anything to your experience. Even perhaps right now, the mind is talking about what is being heard, if it's good or bad, if it's going to help, if it's going to be doable. Based on previous experience, I haven't been able to do this. How will this be in the future? So there's already like a story through which you're perceiving. Keeps you stuck in the past. It keeps you stuck in the story of who you are. It doesn't allow deeper investigation and realization. And so it has to be just looked away from, turned away from. See that when you turn away from the mental dialogue right now, the sounds are still appearing and disappearing. The call is still here. You're still here. Your experience is still flowing, happening. Nothing is being taken away. So you as that which is aware, which you are, is not at conflict with what is. The practice of acceptance helps you acknowledge that you are in that seat. And therefore free of whatever you're experiencing. Just like the space is free of suffering the objects in this room. You can't make the space of this room suffer. It is simply the pure allowance of whatever you put in here. It has no concept of good or bad, heavy or light, what should be and what should not be. It's simply the pure allowance of anything that we put in this room. It doesn't have any attachment to any of the objects. It's not resisting any of the objects. Take anything away at any time, put anything in at any time. You, as that which is aware, that is your nature. Not after years of spiritual practice, but here and now. But the practice of acceptance helps us to acknowledge this. Whereas the story and the constant judging and interpreting and filtering everything through the story and the narrative keeps us stuck in that mental prison, which blocks this deeper seeing, this subtler seeing. You know, it keeps it very on a dense physical level. So that's what we have to unlock through this practice. Dissolving just the solidity of the personal structure. And it's all but possible and doable, regardless of what the mind says right now. Regardless of whatever your idea of your past with spiritual teachings or meditation is, that's all just conceptual stuff. Has no meaning. So I wanted to get to a pre-submitted question, which flows pretty well off this topic. And the question is by Yukanda. And you said it's in regards to feeling the unpleasant sensations in your abdomen. The unpleasant sensations, either in my abdomen or in my chest, happens most of my meditation times. The intensity is the same, or sometimes it gets stronger during my meditation. One, does this feeling signify anything? Two, do I still need to keep my attention on my full body sense or change my attention to the abdomen or chest where the sensation appears? I know I gave you a quick point during the group, but I just wanted to also use this for our conversation today and add further clarity. And I would like you to, before I even answer, ponder, based on what we just shared, what the correct answer would be, you know? So something that happens commonly, and you know, many of you have experienced this, when you do begin meditation or any sort of spiritual practice, the mind reacts with some sort of resistance, and so does the body. Many of us, when we start meditation, it's difficult for us to even sit down and not move. You know, like the body will be so resistant to that. It will throw up all sorts of resistance to that, and it can't do it. The mind may be fearful. It's like judging it. It feels it's useless. It's this and this. So all these sorts of resistances, you know, like it keeps you from silence. Again, we have to see that that's part of the momentum. That's part of the problem itself. So in the same way, you may experience any very creative ways that the body and mind resists. This feeling that sometimes it's like a pressure, sometimes it's a sensation, whatever it may be. You have to not make such a big deal out of it mentally. The mind wants to grasp a hold of it and it wants to make it into a problem. And it, like, then it just focuses on that. You have to allow the experience to be. When it arises, it arises. But this is actually the now going to become the time where you are able to practice this pointer of acceptance, where you're able to observe the uncomfortable sensation and even the pressure of it building up without judgment. You're going to see the mind judging and running away and wanting to get rid of it and fighting it. But even that is observed. And you simply turn away from that and you just allow the sensation to be. Feel the sensation. Even if it's strong, there's no harm in it. It may be getting stronger. Allow it to. You may feel some resistance to it. Observe the resistance as well. Sometimes it may just get too intense where you just have to sort of take a break and you just let it go, let it loose. That's fine. But this has to be the practice. At a mental level, you're always going to be resisting it, but like, oh, well, how could I not want to get rid of this and this? And this is the story. This is nothing other than the mental narrative that keeps you stuck. That is the spiritual practice right there. And it has to be treated as such. So see that when it does arise, well, first of all, even like when let's say now, because it's happening quite often, you sit down for meditation and already you're like anticipating it, that it might happen. Or I really hope it doesn't happen. Like you have to observe yourself, like all these narratives arising, and take your attention away from it. Simply bring your attention away from this. You have to like starve this narrative of life, because it is only our attention that keeps this narrative alive, and therefore the greater picture alive, like the greater resistance. It keeps the prison intact. By you learning to take your attention away from it, even though in the beginning we may not feel safe to do so, but only through the practice of it, you see that it's totally fine. Nothing is lost. The solidity of that concern, that anticipation, will start to diminish. And then in the actual practice of it, if this sensation is arising, allow it. When it is arising, see again, the mind is fighting against it. It wants to run away or wishing it doesn't happen. Now previously when that resistance arose, it was like, it was me, it was so identified with. It becomes you resisting the pain or whatever. Now you have to like, through the observing of it, there's a sort of a distance between you and that which you're observing. You're able to observe the sensation, but you're also able to observe the resistance. You're not the pain and you're neither the resistance either. Previously, both were identified with. Now, you're observing both. And you're letting them be. Because everything is going to arise and subside. No matter how strong the discomfort or whatever, it subsides in its own time. Have no time frame for it. And this is already the current experience. Any state of sadness, happiness, excitement, anticipation, all these states have come and gone. You're surrendering this to this fact. And now, rather than clinging to half of the experiences and mental states and resisting the other half, you're just allowing this play to happen in your witnessing, in your observing. Because only in this unbiased observing do you start to see that I am not in conflict with whatever appears. Otherwise, we stay as that restless mind, clinging to half, resisting half, suffering both. So of course the daily meditation stays intact, right? Which where you are practicing the main pointer, either of the object focused meditation or the self inquiry practice. But during the day, or let's say during the in the meditation when this arises, very simply bring the attention away from the mental narrative or the story about it, or the judging of it, or the interpreting of it, to just the raw sensation of it. Feel the sensation. Allow it to become intense. Even the intensity of it is not harmful to you. It may become unbearable and then you just release, right? So it's okay. Let that be. Let that be. And sometimes you'll do it well. Sometimes you'll completely fail at it. Let that be. Watch even the mind judging if I am good at this or not, if I am succeeding at this or not. You're completely turning away from that. And so you'll see that over time, this because you're no longer mentally, constantly grasping it and interpreting it or judging it or trying to find a meaning in it. This sort of bodily response, like they may just fully fall off, or if it remains to whatever degree, it will be your spiritual practice until it is no longer needed, and then it will fall off. But this is the main thing to grasp here, that the observing of it, or let's say the observer, is not at conflict. The observer of the fear is not fearful. The observer, which is, by the way, you already, you are the observer of your experience, is not afraid, resisting, fearful, sad, depressed. All these are states being observed by you, the formless witness. With each time practicing this and seeing this clearly, of course, in the beginning, it won't be clear because the momentum of the previous goggles is too strong. But little by little, the cloud is scattering, and this clarity emerges. And this will be the direct experience. I have a question here which says, Sunny, this week I feel like everything is bothering me. The world should be different. My home situations should be different. I shouldn't be so sensitive. I shouldn't have a breakdown over something so small. Why have I become like this? What's wrong with me? I'm tired of being fearful, concerned, worried, anxious, absorbing the world's stress. I keep observing and telling myself, this is allowed. This is allowed. It is supposed to feel this way. I'm allowed to feel sensitive, depressed, weak. But for some reason, the anxiety is still intense. I feel low. I feel low energy, fearful of a breakdown, fear of fear. What am I missing here? I feel like I'm trying to consciously accept everything, but this pattern doesn't want to let go. It wants to suffer. How can I free myself? Definitely, in case you joined late, please watch the beginning from the beginning, this recording, because that is the topic of today. And I'm happy that you brought this up today because it is a topic of today's call. We're covering acceptance in a somewhat direct manner. And here you can see, like this, we began today's call by saying like acceptance is not a mental sort of affirming, oh, everything is good, everything is allowed to be, it's fine, I'm supposed to, it's so, because that will never it's not even, it won't even bring you any mental satisfaction, let alone real sense of peace. So firstly, of course, as always, I will say that even going through this experience is fine because it will serve you. It has to sometimes get this intense for you to even listen, for you to wake up. So, regardless of how uncomfortable it is, at least you don't have to love it, but at least see the validity of it because it will help you. It will at least help you approach the situation in a better way, in a more useful manner. So this you'll see like all the concerns that you stated here, like these judgments about the world should be different, the home situation should be different, I shouldn't be sensitive, or I should be sensitive, I should have a breakdown over this. This is all at the level of the mental chatter. This is all at the level of I, this person, this story, my life, you know? And currently, this chatter has too much of a grip over your attention. It has too much of a grip over your interest. And it has to be turned away from. There's no fancy method to this. It's simply the turning of attention away from the mental dialogue and starving it of interest. You would think that it's something more fancy and hard and difficult, but it is literally just this one thing which dissolves these judgments and allows you to wake up to what is prior to these judgments, that judgmentless seeing, that judgmentless self. Now, this capacity to turn away from the judgments will be little to none if the practice is not being committed to. The daily practice has to be there. Otherwise, we won't even have the capacity to follow through with the pointer. So, that's something, firstly, to see. Are you consistently practicing meditation? Without it, you will remain entangled in this stuff. You will feel like you want to be free, but it's like you remain consumed in it. You resist the resistance. That's what it is, right? You mentioned fearing the fear, resisting the resistance. So like when there's you're not allowing yourself to be still and silent, you'll see that this mental dialogue is very, very dysfunctional. It literally not only just judges the world, it starts judging you, your idea of who what you take yourself to be. It will start breaking down the person you take yourself to be. That is where the person goes from being very confident to depressed and self-critical and sad. It breaks down the self-image. And in a way, again, it serves you because when your self-image is very empowered and confident, you could care less about who you really are. You could care less about these spiritual teachings. But when that state becomes dysfunctional and it no longer feels good, now you are curious. Now you want to, see, okay, this can't possibly be right. Why is my own mind criticizing me? This is where you have to, this is your whole life's work now. That has to be the level of intensity with which you approach it to solve this. See, we say we want to be free from this, but then our attention and interest is just in other things. That has to be sorted out. We have to prioritize this first and foremost. So the practice has to be consistent of meditation in the way that we described in the program. So that is the first place to look. If that is consistent, good. If that's not, then start there. Now, from that point, the main two teachings that you have to commit to right now is of course, the meditation, right? And also the acceptance pointer, what we just covered on the call today, which is learning to turn away from the mental dialogue, these judgments, these interpretations, and just start to feel these feelings, observe these feelings, which are associated with these narratives. Feel those feelings, observe those feelings without judgment. You say, how? The judgment happens. Well, the judgment is also being observed to come and go, arise and subside. But you that observes them, who are you? You that observes the judgment, are you judging? You may say, yeah, I am. But actually, even that judgment that you say, oh, I'm judging the judging, is also just another judgment arising and passing in your seeing, in your witnessing. As what are you observing that? So take no judgment to be you and yours. This whole me and mine business is creating all this mess. You'll identify with the fear, and then you'll identify with the fear of fear. Whereas you're none of this. You're just watching this arise, subside, this arise and subside. You're observing this arise and this, talking about this, resisting this. In your witnessing, it arises and passes. This can only become clear though, because of course right now we're talking about it and you may even mentally understand it, but in the moment, in the heat of the moment, you'll lose it. It can only be seen through the practice of the pointer. You have to take your attention. This is a crucial word, attention, away from the judgment. You can't stop thinking. Don't try to stop thinking. You're just going to end up thinking. You have to take your attention away from the chatter and just bring it to, let's say, whatever you're feeling, whatever the feeling associated with all of these depressive and angry and fearful states. You can do it. If something's like, oh, but I try and I can't do it, it's just another interpretation that you're believing in right now, that you're giving all yourself to. Turn away from that. Don't just speak it into existence. Don't just say this is my experience, because it's not. It's also just an interpretation that's arising based on your past, which is at this point entirely conceptual. And in this practice, you will see that the sensation of fear is not harmful. The story of fear is very immersive, and it imposes on you a world of fear and something to fear, you know. But the feeling, the raw sensation of fear, there's no harm in. It's not doing anything. The moment you begin to actually observe the sensation of fear, by turning your attention away from the dialogue about it to the actual sensation, just feeling it and being with it, observing it, this whole structure of dysfunction will start to melt away. I promise you that. But you have to be devoted to this. You have to be committed to this. And you have to be very self curious. Don't just be in this for, like a hobby or a very like mental sort of, oh, I want this, I want to be free, but like you see yourself, observe yourself throughout the day. You're just lost in stuff, maybe. And so you have to, through self observation, fix that. Nobody can help us but our own selves. So the anxiety can only persist if you continue to fuel the thoughts with your interest and attention. The only way. Put this to the test. It cannot last. The taking away of attention. Attention is like the water it drinks. Attention is what brings it to life. And currently it has you gripped. It may seem too simple, right? The mind's like, oh, but no, it can't just be that. Put it to the test. It will not last. And you will lose nothing. You will only lose the anxiety. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to go even deeper into this, I'm running a class on my website right now. It's called Awaken to Your Formless Self. It's up there free for a limited time. If you want to watch it, I would highly recommend it. It is going to help you go so much deeper into this and apply this teaching into your life even more. Really help you wake up to what that practice entails and how to bring depth to the practice and understanding. So again, it's called Awaken to Your Formless Self, free for a limited time. Please go check it out. I'll link it down below in the description box below. And also, if this is something that you need my personal assistance with, if you feel like you need the consistent guidance and support with this practice so that you can deepen your understanding and practice of self-inquiry and dissolve mind identification, awaken to who you truly are prior to the self-image, and become free from suffering your experience, you can learn more about my School of Awakening. I'll link that down below as well. Again, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.